Welcome back. It's been a week. Bruce has still got his legs up. It must have been a relaxing week.
Well, we're recording this right before BrewCon, and so I'm confident it was not a restful week.
Yeah, well.
It was hysterical and fun and all kinds of exciting, but restful, no, not so much.
Heck yeah. Welcome back to Temple of Falls Potty. We're still between seasons, so we're just kind of talking shop about certain cards. Last week you heard us talk about Divine Visitation, so if you didn't, go check that out. It's a short little episode. It's fun. This one is going to also be a short little episode and fun. The card that I brought to the table is something. It's exemplary of so many things that are things that Bruce and I look out for in casual play, in EDH. And it is one of the more interesting of this category. I'm slow rolling it a bit, but it's one of the more interesting in this category that I keep coming back to because I want to include it more. It's a 3 mana rock. It's Replicating Ring. So WotC's been doing this interesting thing where they've been making 3 mana rocks. Sure, they're not optimal because there are 2 mana ones, but they add an ability. So it's either an activated ability or a triggered ability, like with Strixhaven Stadium. But this one, Replicating Ring, is 3 generic mana from Kaldheim. Currently 13 cents. Snow artifact. So any mana it makes is snow mana, which is cool. Taps to add 1 mana of any color. Which is super helpful. Even in monocolored decks, it's just unrestrictive. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, put a night counter on Replicating Ring. Then if it has 8 or more night counters on it, remove all of them and create 8 colorless snow artifact tokens named Replicating Ring with tap, add 1 of mana of any color. So the tokens it makes are also snow artifacts, which is nice if you are going for snow things.
Right.
But also just even at its base, a 3 mana rock that creates mana of any color is helpful. It's Manalith plus, right? Manalith is 3 mana generic, taps to add 1 color of any mana, and so everything else is bonus, just like this episode. But with it adding counters, obviously there's proliferate that can add to it to make it faster. But even so, if you get this, say you get this out on turn 2, or even more unoptimally, get it out on turn 3. By turn 11, when it ticks up to 8, or I guess turn 12, because I don't think does it add 1 until on the next turn? Yeah, so it doesn't add 1 until the next turn. So it'll be 8 turns later. So 4 it'll get 1, 5 it'll get 2, 9, 10, 11. Turn 11 is when you get all of those things. And that's, a very middle of the road result of our games tend to last a little longer than turn 11. And if you get to turn 11 and all of a sudden you have 8 more mana, amazing.
Right.
I think that it may if you get it out past turn 3, where you'd be playing it on curve, it may be a little less helpful, but that's just the ideal scenario, in the very least, it's a 3 mana rock that makes any color, and that's helpful. That ramps you on turn 3. I want to include it more just because it seems like a lot of fun when it does exactly what it wants to do.
I think that this is the kind of mana rock where it's where you're really commander dependent.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are a ton of 3-mana mana rocks that do more.
Yeah.
Faster. Whether it, everything from Chromatic Lantern and the usual group of 3-mana mana rocks that are out there. I mean, a lot of them you can sack to draw cards and do all this other stuff. That's great. But you put this with a card like Peer, Imaginative Rascal, so you can add a token to it. Right. I mean, Peer is what if one or more counters would be put on a permanent your team controls, that many plus one of each of those counters are put on that permanent instead.
Yeah, so you
every
get it
single
after,
time you're doubling it up
4 turns.
And then you've got your host of ways in Simic colors to double
right.
the tokens, and then you've got proliferate and all sorts of other options that way. I mean, this thing is going to be crazy that way. The other part to remember, and I realize that this only really when you're doing all of this doubling, or adding twice as many tokens
right.
instead of just the one. The replicating ring doesn't get sacrificed when all those tokens come off. You get to start again. Now, if the restriction on you adding these tokens is the amount of mana that you have available, well, now you've got 8 mana on top of the 1 mana that this thing can already produce.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to churn tokens or churn up more counters on top of this thing, you can easily do that.
Oh, definitely.
So, so if you're doing 2 or even 3 more counters on the replicating ring every turn, things start getting crazy really fast.
Yeah.
I do love the idea that the copies are called replicated ring.
That is
so
nice.
they can be that way they're a little different and they don't get the counters, but
especially where is Maelstrom Pulse any permanent or is it? Yeah. So Maelstrom Pulse, 1 black-green sorcery, destroy target non-land permanent and all other permanents with the same name as that permanent. So if somebody targets one of the copies, they don't get the original. Or right. Not copies, but you know what I mean. One of the tokens.
Yeah, one of the replicated rings.
Or vice versa, which is nifty. But it's so interesting to compare this to, say, Midnight Clock, which is blue and 2 artifact, taps to add blue, which restrictive because you can't play it in any deck that doesn't have blue, at least in Commander. 2 and a blue, put an hour counter on Midnight Clock. At the beginning of each upkeep, put an hour counter on Midnight Clock. Sure, that triggers 4 times a round, which is cool. And then when the 12th hour counter is put on Midnight Clock, so you need 12 instead of 8.
Yeah.
Shuffle your hand and graveyard into your library and then draw 7 cards. Exile Midnight Clock. So it does. What's that card? Time Twister.
I believe so.
But just for you, because I think my Time Twister's symmetrical. You do it once. You need 12 counters.
Yeah.
Sure, it takes 3 rounds. But also you're putting in probably just as much effort. Granted, this gives you a way to put more counters on it. Right. But you were already you probably already had ways to give it more counters outside of the 2 and a blue or even just turn order.
Right.
So replicating ring, I feel personally, I feel it really it's comparable because of the fact that it does it automatically, but then if you put in a little bit more effort, you can really get it going, and people see that, target it, whatever. But if all goes well, then you get a lot of mana.
It's amazing how reluctant people are to use their artifact destruction or permanent destruction on a card that simply taps for mana. I mean, it's an essential part of the game. We all know this. And yet, over and over again, people use their artifact destruction on the cards they pay for with the mana.
Right.
Not on the card that got them there in the first place.
Right.
Because they're dealing with the problem right now as opposed to what's going to be the problem.
Yeah.
So while it may appear that this one is just sitting there waiting to get targeted, and that someone is just going to wait until you get close to the number of tokens you need, or counters that you need, and then blow it up, it's not likely going to happen.
Yeah, and I think with that too, like it's very much like there have definitely been games where I'm like, oh, this person has all of their mana invested in mana rocks. If I get rid of their mana rocks,
I'm shutting them off.
Right. Yeah. Which like is a decision that you have to make. Either shut them off and they can't immediately win the game in 2 turns, or you don't shut them off and let them do their thing. So it's like very much like how much of a how much do you want to deal with this threat? But I think Replicating Ring is like a nice balance of like obviously unoptimized. Obviously.
Right.
There's so much that gets in the way of this being a good card that people forget that it is a fun card.
Yes. I mean, don't mistake this. We understand that this is a 3-mana mana rock that essentially does nothing else a lot of the time.
Right.
But a lot of the time it's just dead.
But if you're going to run Manalith, I don't know how many of you are, but if you're going to run Manalith, then like this is just a flashier Manalith. And like I guess that'll probably like
it's funky, it's something different.
Yeah, that'll probably attract more targeting, but like maybe that's what you want. You'll keep eyes away from other things.
The other thing that I wanted to spend a little bit more time with this one,
please do,
is it is a snow artifact.
Yeah,
it makes snow mana, and
snow mana like 0.
No, snow, as in like the weather.
But Bruce, it's April.
Yes, right. Well, all the more reason why you'd need a card to make snow mana. And by the way, the replicated rings are also snow artifacts. They also make snow mana. Obviously, this is only relevant for a very small number of decks that would require snow mana for the cards, but they're out there, and it's another option, just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, especially if like for example, Blood on the Snow is like a card that's seeing a lot of play lately, from Kaldheim, where it's 4 black. Destroy all creatures. If you use more, I think it's like 3 snow mana to cast this spell, you get to like essentially take a card. I don't know if it's creature or card. I'm not going to look it up. It's going to take too much time. Let's say creature. You take a creature from your graveyard and put it into play. But that's after everything's dead. So you can essentially save one of your creatures, or if something has a good ETB, or if for whatever reason you left your commander in your graveyard, you get it right back out.
Right.
It's great.
Yeah.
Whew. Yeah. I want to play more of this card. I think I just need to pick up more copies.
Yeah, I don't have any, actually.
The more I think about it, I think between Kaldheim and Ikoria, I just like didn't open a lot of cards.
Yeah, I didn't either.
And I don't think I really like took time to look at what came out in those sets. I think Kaldheim probably has a lot of cards that I want that I just don't realize, which is where this comes from.
Mm-hmm.
I think I have one of these, and I need more.
I have, I'm one of those lucky guys that has 4 copies of Doubling Season, and this card belongs in that deck.
Yeah.
The idea that I can double the rate I put the counters on the card, and then double the number of tokens that I get when it comes out. So it would happen twice as fast and give me twice as many.
Oh my god. Imagine in your peer deck.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm thinking about that.
Like, you get 4 times as many counters every upkeep, or every one of your upkeeps.
Yes, with peer and Doubling Season, you would get 4.
Because you get 2. Because you get, I think, peer is an extra one, and then you stack it so that you get 2, and then you double it.
And then double 4. The 2.
So
you get that many night counters. So after 2 turns,
you get 16.
So then,
amazing.
And then you would get so in 2 turns you would then get 16.
What is this? Christmas in April? I don't even think that that's unreasonable. I like the fact that it takes only 2 turns for that to happen. Like, your opponents need an answer immediately.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. I don't know if that deck has too many ways of mana output. I mean, like, to sink mana into. I'm sure there's something. If not, I'm sure your next step is to look at that. But
there's all sorts of options.
Yeah, I think as we head into season 7, I think this card is exemplary of our attitude toward the game, because it's like, even to the point of Temple of False God is a card that you don't necessarily like. It does you good early game, and you don't hate to see it late game. But it is also one of those things that, like, it's not optimal. Obviously, if you have the temple within the like in your opening hand, you've got thinking to do about how early you can play it. And with this, you like, it does a thing, and there's definitely a point in the game where it doesn't help you anymore.
Right.
Just like the temple. Granted, as does most lands. Beyond a certain point in the game, any single given land or mana producing anything is just like, yeah, it's just one of the boys. It's just there. So I think that this fits nicely into our oeuvre of but we got a cool season coming up for you. Season 7. Starting things off with vengeance. Starting things off with fury and anger. And how you can use that. So be sure to stick around next week for that.
Right, because we know everything there is to know about fury, vengeance, and just generally being angry.
Thank you again for listening to our cool episodes. Let us know what you think. We're going to be back next. We're going to be back next week with a whole season. But after that, we'll do this again and again and again.
You bet.
Yeah. See you next week. Thank you so much for listening. I might as well say it. May your 5th land be the temple.
Bye.
Wait. Before you go, I just wanted to say thank you for listening. You can reach out to us via email at falsepodmtg@gmail.com or on Twitter @falsepodmtg. Bruce is @manaburned, and I'm @AndyWeekend, though you'll definitely notice I use the podcast Twitter far more often. Now that we've got you here, make sure you subscribe, like, rate us on whatever podcast platform you use. It helps us out. It gets us more reach. Subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. Like a video there. Leave some comments for more casual enjoyment. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back with some more timeless discussions about all things casual. So come hang out, and may your 5th land be the temple. Bye-bye. Should I do my best, Bruce? Bye!